This first story comes from a man named Derek, who shared his experience on an online forum back in 2017. He was in his mid-30s at the time, going through a messy divorce that left him financially strapped and emotionally drained. To make ends meet, he took a job as a night security guard at an old office building in downtown Chicago. The building was a relic from the 1920s, with ornate but worn architecture, high ceilings, marble floors in the lobby that echoed every footstep, and long, narrow hallways on the upper floors lined with wooden doors and frosted glass windows. It housed various businesses during the day, but at night it was empty, just Derek patrolling the silent spaces. The job seemed easy enough on paper. Arrive at 10 p.m., do rounds every hour to check locks and lights, monitor the security cameras from a small office in the lobby, and clock out at 6 a.m. He didn't mind the solitude at first. It gave him time to think about his life, listen to podcasts on his phone, and sip black coffee from a thermos to stay awake. The pay wasn't great, but it was steady. And the quiet nights were a break from the arguments and court dates filling his days. The air in the building always carried a musty scent, like old paper mixed with dust and faint traces of cleaning chemicals, and the fluorescent lights in the hallways buzzed faintly, casting harsh, elongated shadows in the corners that sometimes played tricks on your eyes. On this particular night in late fall, Derek arrived a few minutes early, parking in the underground garage where the concrete walls amplified the sound of his footsteps. The wind outside was howling, rattling the windows of the upper floors, and rain pattered steadily against the glass, creating a rhythmic backdrop that made the building feel even more isolated from the bustling city streets. He clocked in at the lobby desk, the old time card machine clicking loudly in the empty space, and settled into his chair, flipping on the bank of security monitors. The black and white feeds showed the usual views: empty hallways, the elevator doors closed, stairwells dimly lit by emergency lights, and the lobby itself reflected back at him. He did his first round shortly after, flashlight in one hand, keys jingling on his belt, walking the echoing corridors. The beam of light swept over locked office doors, fire extinguishers mounted on walls, and the occasional potted plant that looked wilted in the artificial light. Everything was in order. No open windows letting in the rain, no signs of intruders or maintenance issues. Back at the desk, he poured himself a cup of instant coffee from his thermos, the steam rising with a comforting, bitter aroma, and leaned back, scrolling through his phone for some light reading to pass the time. It started subtly. Around 1 a.m., when the storm outside was at its peak, wind gusting against the building like it was trying to get in, Derek heard footsteps echoing from the floor above. Slow, deliberate steps, like someone wearing dress shoes walking down the hall. The sound carrying through the vents. He paused his podcast, earbuds out, listening intently. The steps were measured, not hurried, but clear enough to make him sit up. He checked the cameras for the third floor. Nothing, just the empty corridor, the feed static and unchanging. Figuring it might be the building settling in the wind or perhaps pipes expanding from the heat, he shook his head and tried to ignore it, but the footsteps continued, now sounding like they were pacing back and forth, getting slightly louder, as if descending the stairs one level at a time. His heart picked up a bit, a slight unease settling in his stomach, the coffee suddenly tasting more bitter than usual. Old building, old noises, he muttered to himself. But to be thorough, he grabbed his flashlight and headed up the stairwell, the metal steps creaking under his weight. The air in the enclosed space cooler and draftier the higher he climbed, carrying a faint draft from somewhere. On the third floor, as he pushed open the stairwell door, the footsteps stopped abruptly. The silence rushing back in, heavy and oppressive, broken only by his own breathing and the distant patter of rain on the windows. He swept the flashlight beam around the hallway, empty offices with closed doors, the linoleum floor shining dully under the emergency lights, no one in sight. The air felt colder here, a chill that made him shiver despite his uniform jacket, and there was a faint scent, like old cologne or something musty, lingering. Shrugging it off as his imagination playing tricks in the late hour, he completed a quick walkthrough and headed back down to the lobby. But the unease lingered, like a weight on his chest, making him glance over his shoulder more than usual. He tried to distract himself with another podcast episode, but his focus was shot, every creak of the building now amplified in his mind. Around 2 a.m., the footsteps returned, this time accompanied by whispers. Faint, indistinguishable voices, like a conversation just out of earshot, murmuring through the vents or walls. Derek froze at his desk, straining to listen, the hairs on his arms standing up as a cold draft seemed to sweep through the lobby. The whispers were low, almost like wind, but with a human quality, rising and falling. He checked the cameras again. Still nothing, no movement on any floor. His heart was beating faster now, a knot of anxiety forming in his stomach. He radioed the off-site supervisor for reassurance, pressing the button on his walkie-talkie. "Hey, base, you there? Hearing some odd noises here." But the line crackled with static, no response coming through, the storm likely interfering. The whispers grew a bit louder, now sounding like they were coming from the elevator shaft, murmuring names. His name, Derek. "Come up." Chills ran down his spine, the lobby feeling suddenly smaller, colder, his breath visible in the air despite the thermostat reading normal. He stood up, pacing, telling himself it was fatigue or the weather playing tricks. But deep down, fear was taking hold, his hands shaking slightly as he gripped the flashlight, the beam trembling when he turned it on. By 3 a.m., the disturbances escalated, turning the night into a nightmare. Doors started slamming on the upper floors, the bangs echoing like gunshots through the empty building, making Derek jump each time. His heart raced, sweat beading on his forehead despite the chill that had settled in, permeating the air like an invisible fog. He grabbed his keys and flashlight, heading up the stairs again, the beam cutting through the darkness, his footsteps echoing loudly in the stairwell, mixing with the distant slams. On the 5th floor, the noises were louder, doors rattling in their frames as if shaken by unseen hands. The air was freezing here, his breaths coming in white puffs, the musty scent stronger, almost like decay mixed with something metallic. Then, at the end of the corridor, he saw it. A figure standing motionless, tall and shadowy, its outline blurred in the dim emergency light. "Hey, who's there?" "This is security!" Derek called, his voice echoing down the hall. But it came out shakier than he intended. The figure didn't move, but the whispers intensified, now a chorus. "Join us! Stay with us!" The words sent waves of dread through him, his skin crawling, the flashlight beam shaking as he approached slowly. As he got closer, the figure seemed to dissolve into the shadows, but the slamming doors continued, now behind him, making him spin around, heart hammering in his chest. The metallic taste of fear filled his mouth, his legs feeling heavy as he backed away, tripping over nothing, falling hard on the floor. The whispers surrounded him, pressing in, names of people he didn't know mixed with his own. He scrambled up and ran for the stairs, the footsteps now pursuing, pounding down the hall after him, the air thick with that rotten smell. He burst into the lobby, locking the stairwell door, panting, sweat soaking his shirt. Huddled at his desk, he watched the cameras. The figure reappeared on multiple feeds, moving closer, floor by floor, its form becoming clearer. Like a man in outdated clothes, face pale and expressionless, terror gripped him fully. Time crawling until dawn, when sunlight filtered through the windows, and the noises stopped abruptly, the building falling silent as if nothing had happened. Derek quit that morning, clocking out for the last time, his hands still shaking. The twist came later, when he researched the building's history. It was originally an asylum in the early 1900s, where patients died in a tragic fire, their spirits rumored to wander the halls at night, luring the living to join them in their eternal torment. Former guards had similar stories, some never returning after their shifts. Derek moved out of the city, but on quiet nights, he still hears those whispers calling his name, wondering if he truly escaped or if part of him stayed behind in that old building. The second story is from a woman named Laura, who told her tale in a 2019 interview. She was a registered nurse in her 40s, working at a small community hospital in rural Ohio, a place where everyone knew each other, and the night shifts were usually calm. The hospital was an older facility, built in the 1950s, with long, sterile hallways, rooms equipped with beeping monitors, and a faint echo that carried sounds far. Laura had been there for years, handling the graveyard shift from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., monitoring a floor of about 20 patients, administering medications, checking vitals, and dealing with any emergencies that arose in the quiet hours. She was used to the routine. The fluorescent lights humming overhead, the scent of antiseptic cleaners mixed with the underlying odor of illness and bleach, and the occasional call bell ringing from a room. Her colleagues were minimal at night, just a doctor on call and a couple of aides, leaving her mostly alone on her floor, the silence broken by the soft beeps of heart monitors or a patient's cough. She liked the peace, using the time to catch up on charting or read a book during downtimes, a cup of tea steaming beside her at the nurse's station. One winter night, with snow falling softly outside the windows, blanketing the parking lot in white, the hospital was quieter than usual, only a handful of patients on her floor, most sleeping soundly after evening meds. The weather had kept visitors away, and the staff was light, the building feeling more isolated, the wind whistling through cracks in the old frames. Laura started her shift as always, doing rounds with her cart, the wheels squeaking slightly on the linoleum floors, checking IV lines and noting vital signs in her clipboard, the air cool and dry from the heating system. Everything was routine, no fevers spiking, no alarms going off, and she settled at the station around 10 p.m., sipping her tea, the herbal scent a small comfort in the sterile environment. The hallways were dimly lit to let patients sleep, casting long shadows from the doorways, and the only sounds were the distant hum of a vending machine and the tick of the wall clock. It began around midnight, when a call bell rang from room 204, a room that had been empty since the previous day, after an elderly patient passed away from complications. Laura frowned, checking the panel. The light for 204 was indeed on. Figuring it was a glitch in the system, common in the old wiring, she walked down the hall, her shoes soft on the floor, the air getting colder as she approached, a draft seeming to come from under the door. She entered, flipping on the light switch, the fluorescent bulb flickering to life with a buzz, illuminating the empty bed, neatly made with fresh sheets. The IV stand pushed to the corner. No one there. The bell was silent now, the room still and undisturbed. Shrugging it off as electrical issues, she turned off the light and returned to her station. But a slight chill lingered on her skin, like someone had walked over her grave. Around 1 a.m., the bell from 204 rang again, insistent this time, beeping repeatedly. Laura's heart skipped a bit. Maintenance had checked the system last week. It should be fine. She went back, flashlight in hand, just in case, the hallway seeming longer in the dim light, shadows stretching from the other rooms. Entering 204, the room was empty again, but the air felt heavier, colder, like the heat had been turned off, and there was a faint scent, like wilted flowers or something decaying. As she reset the bell, she felt it, a presence, like eyes watching from the corner, making the hairs on her neck stand up. She left quickly, door clicking shut behind her. But back at the station, unease settled in, her tea now cold and unappealing. Tension built as the night progressed. Around 2 a.m., she saw a shadow pass by the nurse's station out of the corner of her eye. A figure in a hospital gown, shuffling slowly down the hall. "Excuse me, do you need help?" she called, standing up, her voice echoing slightly. But when she stepped into the hallway, it was empty. No patient out of bed. The floor silent except for the wind outside. Her pulse quickened, a knot of anxiety forming in her stomach. She checked the rooms, all patients accounted for, sleeping peacefully. Shaking it off as tiredness, she sat down. But then patients started ringing their bells, complaining of the visitor. An old woman in a gown sitting by their beds, whispering to them. "She's not a nurse," one said, eyes wide with fear. Laura checked each room. Nothing. No one there. But the descriptions matched. Gray hair, pale skin, sad eyes. The air in those rooms was icy. Breaths visible. A faint floral scent lingering. By 3 a.m., the lights began flickering. Corridors dimming, then brightening. Machines beeping erratically, without cause. Laura's fear grew, her hands trembling as she adjusted a patient's IV. The antiseptic smell now mixed with something rotten, like decay seeping from the walls. In the break room for a quick breather, she heard scratching on the door, slow and deliberate, like nails dragging down the wood. Heart pounding, she opened it a crack. Empty hallway, but a cold draft rushed in, carrying whispers. "Stay with me! Don't leave!" The voice was faint, feminine, pleading. Terror took hold, her breaths shallow and rapid, the metallic taste of fear in her mouth, skin crawling as if invisible hands brushed her. She barricaded herself at the station, calling the on-call doctor, but the line was dead. The whispers echoed through the vents, growing louder, calling her name. "Laura, join me." Shadows moved on the cameras, a figure gliding down halls. Laura endured until dawn, the phenomena stopping as sunlight crept in. The twist? Digging into the hospital's history, Laura learned it was built on an old cemetery, graves disturbed during construction, and the visitor matched a nurse who died tragically in the 1960s, her spirit wandering, seeking company in her loneliness. Other staff had quit after similar nights. Laura transferred shifts, but on quiet evenings, she hears the whispers still, the dead nurse calling her to stay forever. Our final story is from a guy named Marcus, who shared it on social media in 2020. He was 28, saving up for trade school by working night shifts at a remote gas station in the Nevada desert, a spot off a major highway frequented by truckers and late-night travelers. The station was basic. A few pumps, a small store with snacks and drinks, and a back room for stock. Marcus's shifts ran from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., alone after the day guy left, handling customers, stocking shelves, and cleaning up under the buzzing fluorescent lights. The desert outside was vast and empty, with hot days giving way to chilly nights, the air dry with the scent of sage and gasoline. He didn't mind the isolation. It was peaceful, time to study or listen to music, the occasional customer breaking the monotony. One summer night, the heat lingered, stars bright overhead, business slow with only a few trucks stopping for fuel. Marcus wiped down counters, the smell of cleaning spray mixing with coffee from the pot he brewed. Around midnight, a customer entered, a tall man in a hood, face shadowed by the brim, browsing the aisles silently. He picked up cigarettes and paid, but his eyes were off, all black, like voids, no white or color. Marcus felt a chill, the air conditioning seeming colder, but rang him up, the man's hand icy when handing over cash. "Have a good night," Marcus said, but the man just stared, then left, the doorbell jingling. After he drove off, things turned strange. Shelves rattled as if shaken, cans falling without cause. Marcus picked them up, heart starting to beat faster, dismissing it as a minor quake, common in the area. But then lights flickered, the station plunging into semi-darkness, emergency bulbs glowing red. Around 1 a.m., The power cut completely. The hum of coolers silencing, darkness enveloping everything except his flashlight. Marcus heard breathing, heavy, raspy, coming from behind the counter. He spun, beam shaking, but saw nothing, the air thick.